It's time to bring the receipts. I never thought I would actually be saying that. Welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to go back to 2017, right before I left the Catholic Church and my priesthood. In Catholicism, in religion in general, there's this teaching of abandonment. Not only abandonment to God, obviously, but also to his representatives, the priests. And that type of disposition is something that is not only for children, but it lasts until you're older. As a young priest, I saw that in people who were 60, 70 years old who were coming to me for advice. And I thought, you're the one who should know, but I guess I'm the representative of God, so I have to tell you what to do. But I guess that's life too, because when everything is perfectly fine, when there's no problems, when there's maybe no crisis that happens, that type of organization flows, and there's a certain peace of knowing that you don't have to think for yourself. You can go to a priest and he can kind of lay out what a good Catholic should do, and then you just do it, and then you feel fine about yourself. But the second that there's an issue, the second that maybe the priest reveals that they're just a human who maybe doesn't know what is best, but only because he has a white collar does he feel entitled to give you advice, then maybe there's some serious consequences that can happen in someone's personal life. Is this foreshadowing? I'll leave it up to you to decide. So, because in all my videos I like to go on and on and on and talk and talk and talk, I just want to lay out some ground rules. The first is, I'm not going to say everything that happened because my video would be hours long. I'm also not going to give names. Of course, I will say that the congregation that I was a part of was the SSPX, but that's as far as I'm going to go. And I'm also not going to focus and put all the blame on the superiors of my life, the priests in my life, because there were things that I did wrong, and I knew that I was not acting the way that I should be. That's why I was asking for help. There were things that were happening in my life that I felt like were not within my control, and I wanted to figure out why. And I think that's a good summary for that part of my life. Being a new priest within the SSPX, I was on the lowest rung of the totem pole, which is fine. There's a certain order of authority, a hierarchy. Looking for help, I not only was searching for help through the priests, but I also was asking them for psychiatric help, because I knew that it wasn't just a spiritual problem, and I knew that what I was dealing with was a lot more general. So going to the priests, the initial movement that I had was to seek their help and their guidance, but also their permission to have a psychiatrist, which wasn't given to me in the end. Maybe for people who are not Catholic, they would have seen my state in that crisis and thought, why didn't you just go get a psychiatrist on your own? You're an adult, you're 27 years old. Can you not do anything without permission? And the short answer is, basically, I was a robot. I could not do anything without the explicit help from the superiors, without their explicit permission. Think of the military. So although the main focus of this video is not particularly to deal with exactly the contents of my crisis, in order to get the context of the situation, and before I actually started reaching out to my superiors and receiving their responses and looking into how they dealt with me, it's important to get some sort of summary. So I'll try to be very brief and my brevity shouldn't mean that it's not important. I hope that makes sense. So for one, I was a new priest, and anybody who has been to the seminary and has been a priest will say that it's very difficult. So I was dealing with that, all of the new responsibilities, and there's a lot, especially in a small community where there aren't enough priests for the number of people coming to church. So it's like the normal responsibility times 100. And then there's being in a new country. They sent me to Mexico after I was ordained. So I didn't have a connection with the culture or the people, and especially not the language. So I couldn't really talk to other people. There were no other Americans there, nobody that I could really connect with on that level who understood my mentality, where I was coming from. There was also this big identity crisis, I guess you could say, where I didn't really know who I was. And I think that because everything was happening at the same time, it kind of pushed me into a corner. And because things had happened before in my life, just so organically, and I just kind of said yes, 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 and went along with the flow so much because I was either told to do something, or I said you should do this, or God wants you to do this, or whatever it is. I'd reached a point where looking in the mirror, I didn't really know who was looking back at me. One of the aspects of that is the fact that I'd pushed down for so long my homosexuality. Not that I wanted to go around and have sex with everyone, but for me, that was a normal way that I connected with other people, men, and I had dealt with it with particular close friends, and there, you know, there's this normal, natural human need that we have to make those types of connections, and for me, that was something that I needed, or I felt like I needed at that time, especially the more isolated that I felt. And then also because of this lack of control that I had, I started to become anorexic and bulimic. So I would eat a little bit of food, and then the little bit of food that I ate, I would throw up afterwards. So that wasn't helping my mental stability. Through all of this, whenever in the past I had had a particular crisis, there was always something that I could rely upon, and that was my faith. And at this moment, I was losing my faith. I was getting to a point where I saw it slipping away, that I was no longer believing, and I did not want to even entertain the thought that I was losing it. So it all came to a head, and I decided to go to a priest that I trusted. I didn't want yet to start the process of going to my superiors and starting this whole thing. I wanted to be very discreet. So I went to the rector of the seminary that I went to a man that I held up in high regard. And this was in August of 2017. And in December, I left the church. So we have a few months and a lot happens. So let's get into these emails. So here's the first email that I sent to the rector on August 27th, 2017. Dear Father, hello from Mexico. I hope that Fatima pilgrimage was wonderful and fruitful for the seminarians. I also hope that you are well. My mind often goes back to my days in the seminary, and I miss those days. Father, I was wondering if there was a time that I could call you. I am going through a bit of a crisis, and I need to talk to someone. Wow, I really wanted to underplay exactly what was going on. You are the person who came into my head first. I really need to talk about this. My first reaction is just to keep it inside, but I know that that is what the devil wants me to do. He wants me to feel alone in this. Thank you very much, Father. In Cristo Padre Pamquist. Sorry about the changing of the lights. It is getting dark outside because there's a storm coming. Very apropos. So I think it's very clear that I was more than willing to listen to advice from the people who were in charge of me and try to remain within religion. My goal was not to find an excuse to leave religion, as many people think. But shall we continue? So eventually, I got a hold of this priest, and there was a lot of back and forth. He told me that I should not only write a letter to the head superior, who was a bishop, the top of the whole congregation in the world, explaining my situation, but also that I should continue to pray and to be a good little priest. And I did that. And I ended up with a long letter that I'm not going to put in this video, but I will put it in the future. The emailing continues September 6, 2017. Dear Father, I'm going to send the letter in a separate email. You asked me if I wanted my name to be used, and I don't mind if Bishop so-and-so knows who I am. But I would prefer if anyone else needs to read this letter that I am kept anonymous. Why? Because I know that priests love to gossip. It was really hard for me to write this because I wrote exactly what I have been thinking. But at the same time, it was relieving to put all my thoughts down onto paper, because for the whole time it had been up here in my head and it was messing me up. I wrote it as if we had never talked. I wrote the letter as if he didn't know me. So I started from the beginning and went all the way to the present at that time, explaining all the pertinent details in order so he had a clear image of my present circumstances. If you find that I need to add anything or change anything, please let me know. As always, Father, you have been a help to me. I am humbled by your paternal care. I patiently wait for your response. Thank you. There's a lot of waiting that happens between the emails. So at this moment, I am sending him the email for the letter for the superior, the bishop, and it's September 6th. Dear Francis, in Europe, it is a little bit late to read and answer right away to your letter. So this is the same day. So if you don't mind, I will do it peacefully. Thank you for sending it to me and assured you of my fatherly affection and prayers. All of this illusion, ever since the beginning, the priest we call father. So there's this idea of a family, and we know how strong a family is, how much they care for each other. And we were told so many times within the seminary that we were giving up the world and everything, having our own little family, in order to enter into this community which would be like a family. And because I had such a strong image of a family in my head, that those words meant something to me. They weren't empty words. About His Excellency, his secretary has access to his emails. Obviously, he is held by the secret of confession, which means you can't tell anybody anything. What are your thoughts about it? We shall continue. Dear Father, this is September 6th, the same day, 30 minutes later. I really just want help. And as long as only a few priests in the district house know my name and it doesn't spread around, I am content. I don't care. Thank you. Speak to you soon. We will help you for sure. That's the response that I got. Let us go to September 7th. Dear Francis, thank you for your frankness. Your letter was very clear and helpful. I sent it to His Excellency Bishop so-and-so in an address that only he can see. So maybe not his secretary like he told me before, but whatever. I called him as well, And he told me that he will contact me again, but he just arrived from a long trip from Australia and Asia, blah, blah, blah. Not sure if I will receive his answer right away. Spoiler alert, no, he doesn't. So before I even talk about it, I prefer to wait his answer to be sure that we will all work in the same direction. So this priest that I'm talking with, that I trust, he doesn't want to give his own advice because he wants to know what his superior will say so that he can say the same thing. Beginning to feel like politics, right? Just wait. I write back September 7th, the next day. Thank you very much. I tried to be as honest as possible, and I'm glad that it was clear. I patiently await your response. Patiently. I was in the middle of a horrible crisis. These emails do not express exactly what I was going through emotionally, mentally, physically, because I'm somebody who doesn't like to cause problems. I like to pretend like everything is okay and put a smile on my face. So that's what comes through in a lot of these emails. September 11th, 2017. So only a few days later. Dear Francis, tomorrow I will call Menzingen, which is where the house of the top guy is. It seems to me that they have a problem with their internet. It's interesting that he's only writing me a few days later. He knew just as well as I did that this was a very serious issue that had to be solved as soon as possible for my benefit. I was not in a good place, so he did. It wasn't like a week later he was like, "Oh yeah, I'll try to." No. A few days later he said, "Tomorrow I will call. Be sure to my prayers and don't let the devil make you think that my silence is due to my Alzheimer's." I was waiting for an answer and I tried to reach Menzingen by email today, but I was not able to reach them. It is quite possible that His Excellency answered me and I did not receive anything in my box. I will see it tomorrow. September 27th. Maybe that doesn't seem to you to be that long after the last email. To me, it was. It was a very long few weeks. I send another email. Dear Father, I just wanted to check in and ask how things are going. I do not know if you are still in France or back in the States. How are things going at the seminary? Yesterday, I spoke with Father, my superior in Mexico. Now, this is where things start getting a little interesting. So before that, I was speaking with the rector of the seminary, who is not my direct superior. Because I was in Mexico, I had a direct superior. Obviously the one who was in the house that I was living in, but then also there is a superior in all of Mexico. So that's who I'm talking about here, Father Blank. So before, I wasn't in the correct channel because it was mainly me just going to another priest, just getting advice. It wasn't like officially starting a case, but we'll see what happens. I know that His Excellency is very busy right now, and I am willing to wait for more progress in my situation. Also, I have a nurse friend who has recommended a psychologist from California who is Catholic and has seen priests before. So remember, I had asked for a psychologist, psychiatrist, anyone, and I was promised one, but, time was ticking. So I started feeling out and trying to see if maybe I could find someone. So I was just kind of throwing that out there like, is this a possibility? I wanted to get your permission to contact him to see if there's any possible way to speak with him. I think that he asked for a lot of money per hour. I'm not sure how much. I may have to travel to California to see him. Let me know what you think. It has been difficult for me still, Father. To be honest, I would like to know if Bishop so-and-so gave you any options to possible solutions. You told me that I should continue here and in Mexico, and that there was options to travel to a contemplative house, so maybe a place away where I could just be alone with God and figure things out spiritually, which always works. But did he elaborate on other options? I would like to hear what he had to say, specifically concerning the solutions that I proposed in my letter. In my letter, I gave not only a description of my situation, but also ideas of possible solutions. Is this something we can do? Is this something? The psychologist, all these different options. It seems to me like there was a lot more communication in the beginning, but now nothing. Thank you again for being here for me. I know that I can always come to you with anything. You have been very generous with your time, and for that I am completely humbled. I remember at that point I felt humiliated because the last thing that I want to be in my life is a problem. I don't want other people to have to do anything for me. That's very difficult. I hate to be a problem. So anytime that I had an issue and I voiced it, it was always something very important. If I could deal with it on my own, I would do it. September 27th, same day. Dear Francis, sorry I am answering you late. We have excuses, which is fine. People have things to do. I know that His Excellency, who is tonight arriving in Colombia, was sick since coming back from Asia, and he was preaching a retreat in between. Excuses. Okay. So it must be the reason why, but I will investigate. Smiley face. Give me some days before to go to contact this psychologist. So he's telling me, wait to contact the psychologist. Good idea, by the way. Smiley face. And I will come back to you then. This kind of change of speed was expected, unfortunately. It is a human reality, actually. Be assured of my prayers right now for your patience, which is part of the journey, actually. Okay, so keep going. So then on October 1st, I receive the first email from the Superior of Mexico. It's in Spanish, so I'll put it up on the screen, but I'll just translate, or I'll give you the gist of what he's saying. There was talk about the fact that, I don't know if you know, but I had thyroid cancer. Yeah, my life just keeps getting better. It's gone now, everything's fine, but I have to take thyroid medication every day. And I thought, okay, maybe my mental instability has something to do with that because, well, if you want to investigate, there's a lot of changes in the chemical. There's an imbalance that can cause mental problems, and so I thought maybe that's what's happening. Maybe there has to be a reason. So I just suggested that I need to maybe go to a doctor, get my blood tested, and see if my levels are okay. So he contacts me and asks me how I'm doing, how did it go with the doctor, which was fine. And he mentions that he hasn't been receiving information. So this is the first insight of the fact that, he doesn't feel like he's being communicated with. Like, I'm not talking with him. I'm not exposing what's really happening with him, which we'll see later on causes a huge problem. He tells me, let's see, lo que me da mucho preocupación es que al parecer usted está fallando mucho en lo que son sus deberes de la vida de comunidad. Okay, so I'm not completing my daily tasks as a priest, and that's what concerns him, which I wasn't. I was in my room all day, feeling like shit. And so, yeah, I'll be the first one to admit that I was not doing everything that I should be doing. I was doing the things that directly affected the people from the church, So I would still go say mass, I would still go hear confessions and stuff like that, but the more community life amongst the priests that I was living with, I would rather be in bed asleep. So yeah, so he's concerned. So he tells me that things can't go on like this, and that we have to figure out what's wrong, especially because of one of the other priests. That it's a lot on him to make up for the things that I'm not doing, and it's not good. So I have to, like, you know, get out of my bed and start acting like a priest, which I tried to do. I tried over and over and over again. And this is also kind of where the beginning of the constant vigilance that I felt being in the house. This superior told the priests that I lived with that they had to report to him and say how I was doing. So not that they were talking to me and helping me and seeing what was going on, but they were just keeping an eye on me and making sure that the superior in Mexico knew how bad I was. So then October 1st, you have to reply to your superiors as soon as possible. I mean, that's hierarchy. So I just briefly explained that the rector of the seminary is in contact with the bishop about my situation. And I told him that actually the past week I thought that I had actually improved with doing the necessary tasks of being a priest, because I actually tried to have that motivation, and that the other priest who was there with me, who was taking all of the things that I wasn't doing and doing it himself, and it was unbearable, that he hadn't talked to me personally, but that it was obvious that he was talking to the superior in Mexico. But of course I say that I'm going to try to improve, that it's my fault, that I will be better. And anybody who's reading my Spanish, who knows Spanish and is seeing how bad it is, remember, this is 2017 and my Spanish has improved a lot. So, I mean, the fact that I'm writing an email in Spanish at that time is actually a miracle. I think I believe in God again. So now it's October 3rd, and I'm receiving an email from the rector of the seminary. So now I have the two correspondences happening, one with the superior of Mexico and one with the rector from the seminary, but through the rector to the bishop, who's the superior of the whole congregation. So he tells me, "Dear Francis, it is moving." If you haven't noticed from these emails, he is not an English speaker. Still a little slow, but we are in the good direction. I will come back to you sooner from now on. Probably that's what he wants to say. Before going to class at the seminary, I want to forward to you the last line of His Excellency Bishop so-and-so message, which is written below in the quotations. Here is the translation. In any case, so this is at the very end, I guess, of the thing, like, oh, by the way, Father, me, has the assurance of my prayers and solicitude. That's it. He hasn't responded to me yet, personally, but I have his prayers. Okay. October 5th. Dear Francis, I was able to talk with your superior, the superior of Mexico, this morning at the end of the electronic superior meeting. So I guess it was a big Zoom call. He will contact you, if he has not already done so, and wants to talk with you in order to help you as you requested. So this is where the politics really start happening. So I'm asking for help. I was kind of relying more on the rector than on the superior of Mexico. That's a whole other story that I didn't, well, now we're seeing that my rector, who already was saying that he didn't want to tell me anything that the main superior of the whole congregation he wanted to be in line with him. Now he's saying, now your superior in Mexico is going to deal with it. So the rector didn't really want to become involved because he knew the politics, he knew the idea of the hierarchy, and that instead of giving the advice and the help to the person who was asking you, you had to go through the channels. Okay. And I respond the next day, "Thank you very much, Father, through all of this. I knew what was happening. I will stay in contact with you if you don't mind and let you know how things are progressing." He was kind of like the rock that I needed during this time because he knew me. I was at his seminary for 7 years. So this was when the Superior of Mexico, I guess he was informed as to the details of my situation, everything that I laid out in summary form in the beginning of this video, and he wasn't pleased, specifically with regard to the fact that I was starting to secretly leave the church at night, not with any of the faithful and not dressed as a priest, but I was going and meeting people and, having a drink, just trying to get out. There's a lot of things that I look back at that time in my life and I think I must have been really messed up in my mind in that situation because I did things that I would never do, that I had never done before, and that I don't do now. So one of the things was I started having a relationship with a guy who was outside of the church. And so this was something that I told the rector, that I laid out in the letter to the bishop, the head of the whole community. And now the Superior of Mexico had found out. He sent me in an email, in order to get my side, a questionnaire. And I had to fill out these questions, not at any length. He wanted me to be as brief as possible and as quick as possible so that he could figure out what exactly was going on. And it's obviously going to be in Spanish, so I'll try to translate it to you, but I want you to know exactly how the Superior of Mexico treated me after he found out the things that I was doing, the things that I was dealing with. Yeah, let's go through this.